A fully vaccinated migrant worker tests positive for COVID-19. He is Singapore's first dormitory infection in 6 weeks. NUS has expelled a student after he allegedly filmed 2 female students without their consent. And making history for Asia, Japan's Hideki Matsuyama wins the Masters, becoming the first from the region to wear the green jacket. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you don't miss a single episode. 25 new COVID-19 cases were confirmed today, all imported. They had been placed on stay-home notice or isolated when they arrived. Today's count doesn't include any in the community or in the foreign worker dorms, but yesterday's singular local transmission was a 23-year-old work permit holder who had already been vaccinated. Well, let's bring in infectious diseases physician Dr. Ling Lee Min to discuss this. She's from the Rofi Clinic at Glen Eagles Hospital. Dr. Ling, we know the worker received his first vaccine dose on January 25th and the second dose on February the 17th. Now, his case is a reminder that it is possible to get infected even if you've been vaccinated. So why should any of us get vaccinated in the first place then?
Well, we do want to get vaccinated because we want to reduce our risk of developing severe symptoms and developing severe infections or severe disease that will make it extremely difficult for us. Studies have indicated that the people who got vaccinated had much fewer symptoms or had no symptoms at all and hardly had to go to hospital to get admitted. So the key thing is that we still need to get vaccinated.
The fact that this worker was vaccinated likely accounts for his lack of symptoms and positive serology tests, as he has produced antibodies. But if those vaccinated still can get infected, what does it mean for Singapore's COVID-19 fight? Will there actually be no end in sight for measures to prevent transmission?
I have to say, I think the curbs are likely to stay for a while. Remember, I think this is something that we are all aware of. This COVID battle or COVID fight is going to be a long one, right? We're in for a marathon. It's not going to end anytime soon, okay? If we think back 1 year ago, even though it does sound depressing that yes, despite vaccination, we can get infected, but if we compare ourselves now to then, a year ago, we were just beginning to learn about the virus. We didn't have the vaccine, and we didn't have a lot of experience with COVID. A year later, we completed our circuit breaker. We've got technology on our side. We've got Trace Together, we've got vaccines, and we've got experience. So yes, I think it is sobering news, right? That being vaccinated does not exclude us from being infected. But one good thing is we know that we are much less likely to get symptoms, much less likely to be sick, and that whatever it is at this point in time, I think we're better off now than a year ago. And yes, no doubt the curbs are likely to stay because of what we are beginning to find out about the COVID infection. But I think that in the long run, we can't think of it as next month, what's going to happen, 6 months' time, or the curb's going to be removed completely. We can't think along those terms. We've got to think about, okay, in a year's time, it is possible that COVID might still be here, but hey, there are going to be very few people being hospitalized and very few people being sick. That on its own, I think, is actually extremely good news.
Right. Well, Dr. Ling, thank you very much for coming on the show. I've been speaking to infectious diseases physician Dr. Ling Lee Min from the Rofi Clinic at Glen Eagles Hospital. In other local headlines, the National University of Singapore has expelled a student over allegations that he had filmed 2 female students without their consent while engaging in sexual acts with them on separate occasions. An NUS spokesman confirmed that a board of discipline had been convened back in February. It decided to terminate the student's candidature with immediate effect from February the 10th. Well, moving on, the Museum of Ice Cream at Dempsey, a new attraction announced last week, will be opening in August. While the museum originates from the US, it will have a Singapore-inspired dragon playground, with another highlight being a sprinkle pool built as the museum's largest to date. You can reserve your tickets from today on the museum's website. And launching this past weekend, a new initiative is encouraging dog owners in Bukit Timah to clean up after their pets. Up to a third of households in that area are dog owners. Started by a group of young people, the campaign aims to get dog owners to abide by unwritten social norms, like keeping dogs leashed on walks, cleaning up dog waste, and throwing it away in designated bins. Well, in the ongoing battle of the sidewalks between cyclists and pedestrians, which side are you on? In this video by Vanessa Liu for ST's investigative series, we look at where people stand on the issues and what the solutions might be.
In tiny Singapore, the fight for the use of space is never-ending. The latest conflict zone, it seems, is on pavements.
For many years, cyclists rode mainly on roads where they jostled with motorists. Fatal accidents grew over the years until 2016, when bicycles and PMDs got the green light to go on footpaths. In 2019, the government backpedaled on PMDs and banned them from the sidewalks. Now, some are calling for cyclists to be booted off as well.
Today I see a lot of handphone on one side and cycling with one hand. And these are all dangers. What happens if you hit an elderly person?
I don't think it's safe. Very often they run through our cane and they break.
I think we'll be taking a step back if we ban bicycles from footpaths. Some people have the kind of ownership to say, okay, because it's a pedestrian walkway, it is mine, therefore everybody gets out. But the challenge is we do not have enough space in Singapore to build dedicated pathways for different users.
The good news is that come 2030, the cycling path network here will be tripled in length. Portions of roads such as Upper Serangoon Road and Upper Paya Lebar Road could be converted into cycling lanes under a new study. But what can Singapore do in the meantime to make footpaths safer?
My wish is in the future we will go more towards like the Dutch system. They have three distinct networks: walking, cycling, and driving. And these three networks are mostly separated.
But until then, some are choosing to keep off pavements altogether. Yuwen used to cycle on pavements, but no longer does so. As a cyclist, he found it too dangerous because of oblivious pedestrians. Instead, he now prefers to be on the roads, despite the dangers.
Excuse me!
The team behind this episode, Vanessa Liu and To Ting Wei, are with me now. So Vanessa, let's start with you. In producing this episode, what behaviours and actions of both cyclists and pedestrians that were particularly worrying for you?
When we were doing our groundwork out in the streets, we realized that a lot of pedestrians tend to be complacent on footpaths. Some of them have this pedestrian is king mindset. I must be safe on pavement, so I can play with my phone or not pay attention to my surroundings. So as a result, we do have a lot of people we term as phone zombies, who would be walking around with their faces buried in their phones and not paying attention to the surroundings. And that was there were quite a number of people that we observed that were doing that on pavements. Yep. And when we were outside Bedok Mall, we actually did a rough count of about 150 phone zombies in a stretch of 20 minutes on a weekday, slightly around 7 p.m. So this was a common occurrence that we observed while doing our groundwork. And then at the same time, there were a few cyclists who were riding a little recklessly, I would say, a little on the fast side, and pedestrians had to swerve to avoid these cyclists when they saw them. So this was some of the behaviors that we observed. So actually, before we began work on this video, we observed this me versus you attitude that pedestrians and cyclists have towards each other. And we wanted to tap into this sense and explore this issue at a deeper level. And following the publishing of our video, we received an outpouring of feedback from the viewers, and we realized that this sense was even much stronger than we had expected. And there were even audiences who wrote on our Facebook page and said that they have experienced similar incidents, near accidents and collisions with cyclists. And there was one who was even knocked down by cyclists, and she was left bleeding on the side, while another whose elderly mom was knocked down by cyclists and had to be hospitalized with a deep cut to her head. So these accidents that the viewers cited made us realize that this was a problem that is actually very, very prevalent, and it's only set to worsen as more people adopt cycling as a way of getting around.
Right. Okay, so like you said, Vanessa, prevalent problem. So let's talk about what can be done to address these problems. To borrow one of the lines from the episode, some call for more imagination in how Singapore can make room for cyclists. For example, overtaking lanes on footpaths, dedicated lanes for cars, cyclists and pedestrians, and even a hybrid lane that bicycles will share with buses. So Ting-Wei, let's bring you into this discussion. Are these win-win solutions given our infrastructure constraints, you think?
So during our interviews with all these cyclists and pedestrians, we got some suggestions about what we can do moving forward in terms of developing the cycling infrastructure here. So one of the main ones that you have raised is the one that an retired architect told us about, which is having kind of like overtaking lanes on footpaths for cyclists. So these overtaking lanes are not really like full-fledged lanes where you create 1.5 meters worth of road space for cyclists to cycle, but it's more of like maybe like grass pavers, like small concrete slabs at the side of footpaths where cyclists can cycle on when they are trying to overtake people. So the width of these slabs are maybe like 30 cm, 50 cm. It's not very big, but it's really just meant for cyclists to overtake when they need to. So that does sound like a more feasible solution because it doesn't take up so much space and it seems like it's quite cheap. But of course, as with these kind of things, when you implement it on the ground, it can be quite different. So other things that people have called for include dedicated lanes for cyclists, which is not a new suggestion and which is what has been done in some other countries. But again, this is limited by space constraints. But it doesn't mean that it's impossible, in my opinion, because like when you have places such as maybe like Braddell Road, where you are looking at taking away parts of the road space to create more space for cyclists, it does sound plausible that maybe some of this space can be dedicated to cyclists exclusively. But of course, there are a lot of other considerations, such as the road traffic there, the amount of pedestrians in the area. So again, that's something that needs to be studied, but it shouldn't be something that should be ruled out, given that, I mean, we have been going with the current system for quite long, so might be worth thinking of the box and looking for solutions to accommodate these kind of solutions. The last one that we heard from another cyclist is about hybrid lane for buses and bicycles. So again, this does sound like a good idea on paper, because I mean, for these two, if you can create lanes for them, it makes cycling more appealing. But there's also the safety aspect as to how you accommodate bicycles and buses in a lane on the same road for long distances, which might be something of a safety concern. So that might be something that might not be coming anytime in the near future. But I guess for us, we also got to look beyond just the infrastructure considerations when it comes to having like promoting bicycling in Singapore, because like often raised, there's only so much space that we have. So I think to the authorities' credit, they have tried something else, like such as promoting the pedestrians' code of conduct and also the cyclists' code of conduct, where like instead of focusing on infrastructure alone, they are trying to encourage changes in behavior. But this is quite limited in terms of its impact, because when we talk to pedestrians, most of them don't know about the existence of such a code of conduct that they have to follow. So moving forward, I think public education efforts should also be quite important in terms of teaching people how to share paths properly. And for pedestrians ourselves, and also for cyclists, we both really do have to take note of what kind of rules are there and try to have the mindset that you got to share paths with others. You are not the king of the path or the road yourself. There are others there, and I mean, like, the whole society got to come together to share it. So other solutions beyond this infrastructure and behavioral changes, there have also been calls to license cyclists in light of recent issues on the roads. Like I think on April 1st, the actor Tay Ping Hui showed a video of cyclists riding quite regularly on the roads. And 2 days later, we saw another video of cyclists along the road along Woodlands Road or towards Woodlands Checkpoint. They were just spreading across the road, even though like there were 3 lanes, they were not keeping to any particular lanes, and that provoked quite a lot of angst amongst people watching on Facebook also. So now there are increasingly more calls for cyclists to be licensed, such that you can kind of like with the license plate, you can identify errant cyclists and penalize them accordingly, or hopefully put more pressure on them to behave in a more responsible manner. So that's something that the authorities haven't really responded on, and we will have to see how that goes.
Well, Tingwei, Vanessa, thank you so much for weighing in on this issue. Journalists Vanessa Liu and To Ting Wei there on the latest close-up episode about the battle between cyclists and pedestrians. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's a link to the full episode in the description below. Looking overseas, India reported nearly 169,000 COVID-19 infections overnight, a record tally which takes it ahead of Brazil as the second most affected country globally, with the US still having the most number of cases. So after months of reporting ebbing daily surges earlier this year, India is again facing an escalating health crisis amid a nastier second wave of infections, which has begun to overwhelm hospitals, trigger vaccine supply shortages, and force some states to impose partial lockdowns. But on the vaccine front, it has administered more than 104 million doses so far. According to her lawyer, Myanmar's ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi was hit with a fresh criminal charge today under its natural disaster management law. Ms. Suu Kyi has been charged in 6 cases altogether, 5 in Naypyidaw and 1 in Yangon. The next hearing is set for April 26th. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte is expected to address the nation in a live broadcast tonight, his first public appearance in almost 2 weeks. His recent absence has fueled speculation that his health is failing. Some even claim that he has died in Singapore after suffering a mild stroke, especially after his daughter confirmed that she had flown here last week. But Mr. Duterte's aides and sources have dismissed these rumors. So other than proving his state of health tonight, Mr. Duterte is also expected to share more on the government's decision to ease quarantine restrictions, even though the number of COVID-19 infections remains high. In sports, Hideki Matsuyama blazing a trail for golfers in Japan and Asia by becoming the first Asian to win the storied Masters tournament. The 29-year-old finished 1 shot ahead of American Will Zalatoris. The Straits Times' Rohit Brishnath says that while Matsuyama didn't display great golf in the final round, he played bravely, not cracking under pressure.
No, when you're the first man to do something and he's the first Asian to win the Masters, there is incredible pressure because people don't know whether you can actually do it. So nobody's ever carved out a path before. So the first man is always very, very difficult. And I thought he did an extraordinary thing, and you need proof. I think what athletes do is they give other athletes in their country, in their continent, proof that this thing is possible. And I think that's what he's done. I think, he's told Anirban Lahiri, he's told all the other Asian golfers that, look, these majors are not beyond us. The Masters is not beyond us. In women's golf, Asian women have won so many. Men's golf, there's only been 1 man before him who's won a major. So I thought it was extraordinary. I think the message that he sends out is very, very, very powerful. Because there are many things that Asian athletes still haven't done. I mean, for example, a male athlete has yet to win Wimbledon, for example. And so you're slowly trying to tick off boxes to prove that there is nothing beyond you. And I think this was an incredibly important box that he ticked.
Well, congratulations have been pouring in, including from Tiger Woods, who said Matsuyama's historic win will resonate around the entire golfing world. And there are already calls for the Japanese to light the Olympics cauldron during the opening ceremony in July. Well, before I go, from this Wednesday, April 14th, walking, cycling and kayaking tours can now have up to 50 people, up from 20 currently. More on this story coming up on ST's News Night later at 9 p.m. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel's The Straits Times' YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.